Welcome to a new video in my channel, and today I want to show you a Bluetti EB3A power station. And this is something that I bought myself for Christmas, and I bought it at the end of the Cyber Monday sale, which ended at the end of November. And actually I already received it a couple of weeks ago. It looks like that there is a really high demand for these, and Bluetti has a separate store or separate entity to sell this stuff in Europe. And based on the comments that I've seen on the, some of the Facebook advertisements, it looks like that there are a lot of people who live in Ukraine are looking for these products. I guess you can understand why they are looking for some separate power supply solution. And maybe for that reason, or just regular supply reasons, I wasn't able to get mine for Christmas. So it literally took like 2 months to fulfill the order. But I'm happy that it's here. Of course, I was able to chat with them throughout the process, and they told me that they have some issues and they are expecting new shipment. And it wasn't really something that I needed right now. I was more interested in, how these things works, and I wanted to just play around with something. Because I have seen these products, I mean, not only Bluetti, but some of the, the three main brands that are really advertising themselves, and they are visible throughout YouTube. And I mean, I just choose Bluetti because I thought that maybe they are somehow Europe related, but yeah, it was just a name which sounded Italian, but this is a Chinese company. And I picked something which is the smaller in the lineup. And I think this EB3A is actually a fairly new model. And I thought, for experimenting, it's going to be a really good product to start with. And it turned out that it has a lot of really good features that some of the higher models don't have. So I'm actually quite happy that I picked this one. And of course, I'm going to talk about these features when I talk about the overall overview. And interestingly, one of my friends also got a Bluetti, so he got the EB70 model with a separate solar panel. So he was around and we were playing around with the two units. So actually I have a couple of comparisons between this and the bigger model, so I better understand the differences between how this model compares to some of the bigger ones in the line. Let me just quickly go through the stats, and I'm going to cheat here. I have the user's manual here. So this is the EB3A model, and it looks like that the numbers in Bluetti, at least for these models, is roughly the kilowatt hour capacity of the battery. So like 3A, like 300. So this has a 268 watt hour battery, which is 12 amp hours, and because the EB70 has like roughly 700 watt hours. And the cell type is LiFePO4, so those are the type of lithium batteries that are more tolerant and less likely to catch fire. But these are the type of batteries that I used in all of these power stations. In terms of the dimension, this is in millimeters, this is 255 by 180 and 185. And that is in inches in 10.04 inches and 7.09 inches and 7.2 inches. So you get a rough idea of the weight. And this is 4.6 kilos, so not really heavy, and that's about 10.1 pounds. And yeah, you can easily carry it, and definitely easier to carry it. In terms of the capacity, you can see, I'm going to bring you closer on, but there are a couple of DC outputs and there is one AC output as well. And on the DC output, you have a lot of different plugs. So you have cigarette lighter and another 12 volt output, and those are rated for 10 amps. So roughly about 120 watts of power on DC. There are also two USB ports, which can go all the way up to 3 amps. And there is a USB-C PD port, which can go up to 100 watts. So that USB-C would be, plenty to power, for example, a laptop directly over USB-C. You don't even have to carry your power pack to power your laptop. And on the AC output, it can drive anything up to 600 watts. There is a special function where it can drive 1200 watts, but only a resistive heating. So that's like some sort of heater. But that would be for a really short amount of time, because the battery would run dry pretty quickly. So these are the main stats. The other thing I would also mention that the inverter, which does the 240 volts to 230 volts, can be switched between 50 and 60 hertz. So that's an interesting thing if you have specific devices that, you know, designed in, it's let's say in Japan, which is designed for, you know, 60 hertz, you can power it with this, and this would be able to give out the 60 hertz that it requires. And also there are a lot of different input options, so you can charge it using mains, you can do also solar panels, or you can buy adapters where the solar panel input can be turned into a car charger input. So these are the various options you have to power this device. Since I mentioned power, I also want to say that on the mains it would charge the unit at 250 watts, so it would charge up roughly in an hour. Again, there is a special mode to do extra fast charge for those situations where you really need to you know, charge it quickly because you have to go somewhere. And from any of the DC inputs like solar panels or the car battery, it is limited to 200 watts. So that would charge fully in slightly more than the, you know, the AC charge time. And also it is possible to charge from AC and the DC at the same time. And since I finished the specs, I also wanted to mention that this is the smallest unit in the Bluetti family. And it is a lightweight unit. It doesn't have an awful lot of capacity, so it is really designed for light uses. For example, if you want to charge your batteries a couple of times, you want to run your laptop, you'll be able to charge it a couple of times, or you want to take it to a campsite, or you go fishing and you need a couple of lights, maybe you need to run a mobile fridge to cool your beverages. That sort of use is what this is used for. So again, it has an almost 300 watt hour battery and the 600 watt capacity. So maybe you think that this 600 watts is not going to be a lot for most of the, you know, it is definitely not good enough for power tools and garden tools. But again, also remember that if you are driving something at 600 watts with the battery, that battery is going to run flat in about 20 minutes. But if you lower your power consumption, let's say to 120 or 150 watts, that would be almost like, you know, 2 hours of battery life. And if you go something lower, like for example, a couple of lights or a string light, a couple of LED refractors, which take like 50 watts, or if you have one of these fridges that plugs into a car cigarette lighter socket, they usually go around as well 45-50 watts. This unit will be able to power that for 6 hours. So this is the type of use Bluetti is intended this device to be used for. And since I mentioned in the beginning that when I bought this model, a friend of mine had the EB70 model, I just want to say a couple of things about how the two unit compares. So first of all, I already mentioned about some of the extra features. These have the UPS mode, that the charger is built in, and also that it has the Bluetooth app. So none of these features are available on the other unit. So the charger is an outside unit, and also that charger is only 200 watts. So it can charge at a slower rate of a much bigger battery than this one. So this is also a fairly unique feature of this device, not to mention that in the turbo mode, it charges at 370 watts as opposed to that 200 watt external charger. But on the other hand, because the charger is not built inside, that EB70 model, which is, I mean, it is definitely bigger than this one and heavier, but it has almost 3 times the capacity of this in terms of, well, okay, two and a half. So it definitely has a lot more battery capacity than what the size and the weight would suggest. And it has, so that's around 700 watt hours, and the inverter is about 1000 watts. But again, that 1000 watts is not really designed for any of the power tools. So we tested it with a few tools, and so it was just able to spin my lawnmower, which is 1200 watts, but it was really struggling, and it was really slow. It would definitely not cut grass. And again, it wouldn't really power anything else because let's say a miter saw or a chop saw, that's usually start around 1200 or 1500 watts, which would be way too much. So you are getting a much better battery, a much bigger unit, which would be able to power devices like fridges and lights and everything for a much longer period of time. But again, I don't feel that it would be able to power a lot more type of devices, because the difference between 600 and 1000 watts doesn't seem that much once you start looking at the devices and how much your devices consume. But of course, if you are using that for the camping and the fishing type of activity, that unit would be able to power your gears for an entire day, and probably this one would be more enough for a long evening and an afternoon. So definitely there are scenarios where you want to go for the bigger product with a larger battery and more capacity to run your devices. I mentioned right in the beginning of the video that I'm quite happy that I got this model because it has two really interesting features that some of the bigger models like the EB50 and the EB70 doesn't have. And these are, so let me just mention them separately. So first of all, you see that there is an AC input here, and there is an AC lead provided in the box, which converts the the 240 mains or the 230 mains into a standard EEC plug. So it means that the charger is actually built inside this unit. And if you buy any of the bigger units, the charger is a separate big brick, for example, like a laptop charger. So if you have this one, you don't have to bring your charger separately. And if you happen to have this type of leads, maybe if you forget the lead, then it's still likely that you would be able to charge this unit. So again, it's a little bit more compact in that case, that you don't have to bring a separate charger. But probably that, the charger which is built inside is probably taking up space from the batteries, because compared to the volume, it has a slightly smaller amount of batteries or capacity than some of the bigger models. And the second great feature, which is also related to this built-in charger, is that it can function as a UPS as well. So if I connect the charger now, what you're going to see is that, well, the first number goes up, which says that it is charging the battery. But it's probably not going to go up much because it is. I just forgot to switch on the main switch. So it's pretty much full. So it's not going to go like 250 watts full. But you're going to see that there is a small indicator which says UPS. So now what it's doing is, as long as the mains is connected, that mains is directly feeding the AC output. So this lamp, which is connected here, is actually not powered by the built-in battery, but because the AC is connected, it is powered directly from the AC. And as soon as this AC is gone, so if I disconnect this one, then it automatically switches over to battery power. And according to the documentation, I think it does it in 10 or 30 milliseconds. It really depends on the load. But I have tested it with my 3D printer, and I had a really big job that I needed to print, and I don't have a UPS on my 3D printer. So I really wanted to make sure that even if I have a small power outage, my print is not going to go into waste. So I connected this one to it, and I even did some tests, which you can see now. And as soon as I disconnected my power, the 3D printer was able to continue. So the two main things about this is that it is able to switch to the internal battery and the inverter so quickly that at least the 3D printer did not notice the really short power outage. So I'm not saying it's going to work with everything, but it seems to be working just fine. So it is a great feature, because now I have this device, and if I have like some really big jobs from my 3D printer, then I can just use this as a UPS. And if I'm not 3D printing anything, I can take it with me to the beach or somewhere else where I need mains power, or I need a battery. And probably the third feature, or the third good feature, is that it has a built-in Bluetooth connection, and there is a Bluetti app which is available on the phone. So I'm able to manage this device from my phone as well using Bluetooth. I'm not really sure how much I'm going to use this functionality. I don't think it's particularly useful for me, but I can imagine that if you are using this in a tent or an RV somewhere where you don't necessarily place it somewhere where you are going to see it, but you're going to hide it in a cabinet or something, then you don't have to reach to it in order to switch in the DC or the AC or check the battery capacity, but you can just open up the phone and view all this in the Bluetti app. And I'm going to show you the app later on how that works. And now that we have gone through the the main specs and the details and some of the advantages that I wanted to highlight, let's go through the actual main features. So all of the controls that you need is actually here, and well, everything is accessible using a couple of buttons, and also there is a screen here on the front. Let me just unplug everything so you can see how it all looks like. And all these is nicely laid out. So you have obviously the screen here, which is automatically going to go off, and you have a DC section. So you see the cigarette lighter here, you see two DC jacks. So all of these are rated for 12 volts and 10 amps, so about 120 watts. And you have the two USB here, which is up to 3 amps, and you have the USB-C, which is 100 watts. 12 volts, 10 amps is a decent power output. And I think most of the cigarette lighter adapters and devices that you would find is probably going to be around 10 amps or less. So most of it will be able to be powered from here. And that's about 120 watts. So again, that would be, 2 hours running them on this battery. And the other output I wanted to highlight is this USB-C. So this is a USB PD output, which is capable of delivering 100 watts. So that's quite a lot. I think that's probably the sort of, well, I probably wouldn't say the top, but most of the big USB-C PD chargers are now up to 100 watts. And a typical laptop takes like 65 watts. So if you have a laptop and you bring this device with it, you don't even need your laptop charger, you just need a USB-C, and this would be able to charge your laptop at the same speed as your laptop charger would be able to do. So that's a really nice output. So that's all the DC side. We have one more DC output, which is a lamp. And yes, you have these buttons here. And as you can see, you press the button first, it goes into like a low power mode, but that's also fairly bright. So that's 1 watt. You press it again, it's 2 watts. You press it third time and it goes into an SOS strobe mode. And then you press it again and it turns off. And by the way, if you are in any of the mode and you're long press, you're going to turn it off. And also you have a separate power button for all the DC outputs. So this is how you switch all these DC outputs on and off. There is one more DC output, which I haven't mentioned. It's on the top here. And this is a wireless charger for your phone. And this is wireless charging up to 15 watts. And that is also part of the DC output. And that's quite nice. It charges my phone, and this is the first time I have a wireless charger which is good up to 15 watts. So my phone was saying fast wireless charging, which I haven't seen before. So this is all DC. And now let's look at the AC side. So this AC output side, we are getting a single plug. And again, as I said, maximum of 100 watts. And you have a button. So this is how you turn on the AC output, and you can hear a small relay inside. So that's how you know that it is on. And yeah, that's it. So of course you can, power multiple devices from here. So you can plug an extension lead. And if you go anywhere above 600 watts, then the unit is just going to cut power. And there are some indicator lights down here. So one of them is going to say overload. So that's when you go above 600 watts. And there is also a second one which says short. And I noticed that if I try to power something really, really big, like a lawnmower, which is 1200 watts, then it doesn't say overload, it says it's a complete short. I already mentioned in the beginning that this is not really for power tools. Actually, I was trying to test my power tools. So my leaf blower, obviously that's 3000 watts, so there was no chance that this would power it. I also tried my lawnmower, which is 1200 watts. It wouldn't even start, so as soon as I applied the power, this would cut. And the only garden tool I was able to power from this one was an electric edge trimmer, and that's 450 watts. But when it's running idle, it's more like 300 watts. So that was running fine from this. So technically, I should be able to strap this on my back, and I would be able to be trimming for roughly around I would say half an hour, and this would run happy with that. I think it is mentioned somewhere in the documentation that if the battery capacity drops below a certain watts, then, sorry, a certain percentage, then it's going to lower the output. It's going to limit it to 200 watts or something similar. So you won't be able to, run a sort of like an AC power which is, let's say, more than 50% for the complete capacity of the battery. So that's the AC output. And as I said, you can change between 50 and 60 hertz if you want to. And finally, we have a section for the inputs. And I already mentioned that you have this AIC connector here for 230 volts. And the AC input, according to the documentation, is 268 watts, a maximum. And that's exactly the capacity of the battery in watt hours. So that would be able to charge the battery in 1 hour. I mean, technically it's going to be a little bit more, because as soon as the battery reaches, I think, 80%, it throttles down to about 150 watts. But, like in 1.5 hours, you would definitely get the battery charged 100%. And you have the DC input as well, which can accept anything from 12 to 28 volts and 8.5 amp max. So in the box, I didn't show you because I'm not using it at the moment, but there is an adapter which converts this plug into an MC4 that you can plug into a solar panel. And also you can buy foldable solar panels from Bluetti as well. But there is also an adapter, so you can plug it into a cigarette lighter in the car, and you can charge it, charge this box when, on the way, when you are driving your car into, let's say, a campsite or to your fishing lake. And now let me bring you even closer so we can see the screen. And the screen automatically turns off after, I don't know, a couple of minutes. And if you press any of the buttons, you can see the buttons for the light and the DC and the AC. Then first it's going to turn the screen on. And then if you press it again, then it's going to do, whatever it's supposed to do. So for example, if you have the AC running and the screen is off, you press the DC button, it's just going to turn on the screen. And if you press the DC button again, it's going to turn on the DC. And the screen is very simple. And I think this is the third iteration of this screen from Bluetti. And actually, this is probably the one that I like the most, because the first screen was a dot matrix screen, which had really small things. So that was probably a little bit more difficult to read. This one has basically three main readings. So you can see here that it has an input, so the percentage or the wattage of charge. So if I connect my AC again, you will see that this starts going up, and I have the power connected. So there was a relay clicking, and this is now going up. So it's now charging 170 watts, 200. Oh, okay, it goes all the way down to 264 now. I'm looking all this in the camera, so everything is upside down. Yeah, 264. But I think it's going to throttle down because, well, it's already 88%. Or maybe it throttles down at 90%. And also what you see is there is this small number below the state of charge, which is the middle screen. And that shows you how much time it's going to take until the battery is fully charged. So that's also nice because you can see that it is, how long you need to get the battery fully charged. And you can see the UPS indicator here. And also you can see that the AC is turned on. If I turn on the DC, then the DC light is lit. So it shows you that the DC is on. Of course, you have the indicator lights here. So you can see that that one is lit as well. And that's pretty much it. You can see the 50 and the 60 hertz. So at the moment it's set to 50. Besides all these, what you are now going to see in the screen, that there is a couple of status messages here. One is the overload. So this is when you are trying to connect something which draws more power than either from the AC or the DC. There is also a short when the surge is so high that it's noticing as a short. And there is also one which says temp. So if the battery would overheat, then you are going to get a temp message which says that it's too hot to charge the batteries. By the way, what I didn't show you that on the one side there is, on both sides there are some grills, and on one side it's going to draw air in and it's going to blow out on the other side. So if you are planning to mount this or so if you're away in some sort of cupboard, you need to leave some space on either side to provide sufficient ventilation for this unit. And by the way, let me just go back to charging. You can see that now we are above 90% and the charge current has gone down to 120, roughly 120 watts. So these are, these type of messages. Actually, there are two messages here as well, or indicators. There is an indicator for the turbo charging, which I'm going to talk a little bit later. And also there is an indicator if the battery is running low, which I've never received because I always try to keep this battery charged. By the way, there are some recommendations on the manual if you are not using it for an extended period of time, how you should, keep charging it from time to time just to keep the battery topped up and make sure that it doesn't run completely flat. And let me show you how the DC side of it works. So if I disconnect the mains, then the charging is going to stop and the UPS indicator is gone as well. And if I connect my mains source, which is a small IKEA lamp, then we are going to see that it takes a couple of seconds for the power to ramp up. And I'm thinking that maybe this is a really small power consumption light, so maybe it's not even going to register because it's a small LED desk reading lamp. But let's say if I connect the USB-C, which is charging my phone, and my phone is, it's not 100%, then you can see that now we are drawing 15, 12, 16 watts from the USB. And again, you can see this middle indicator here, which says if you are drawing that much current or that much power from this device, how long it would last until the battery runs flat. So at the moment it shows 14 hours or almost 15 hours. So you can see that, charging phones with this is going to last this long. Okay, so finally, let me show you how this Bluetti app looks like. So you download this app. It's available for Android and iOS as well. And it is going to communicate with the device using Bluetooth. You can create an account, but even if you create without an account, you can just click on connect and it's going to search for all the nearby devices. So I can see that it's the EB3A and then some random numbers. So I connect to that and I'm in the main screen. So here you are going to see pretty much what you see on the screen as well. So the state of charge in the middle, and you can see all the various ways the unit is either getting power or how you draw power from the unit. So you can see that on the DC side I'm powering 13 watts, and on the AC side, as I said, this lamp is probably just really small lamp, so it's not even registering, so it's probably below 1 watt. And you can see that on the input side you have the grid and you also have PV. So if I reconnect my mains, by the way, I can switch the screen on as well. So we will see that on the grid side the power ramps up. 70, okay, so it settles around 150 watts because it's already above 90%, the state of charge. And you can toggle the AC and the DC outputs. So if I disconnect the AC, then the lamp goes away, as you can see here. I can do the same in the DC as well. There is also a power button, so it is possible to completely power down this device, and you can do that on the screens as well, on the buttons as well. So if you long press any of these, like the AC or the DC button, you can power the device down. You're not going to really notice much. Of course, when it's powered down, then it's not responding to the Bluetooth either, but there is a power down feature on this anyway, which also reminds me that if you are planning to, and also this reminds me, if you are planning to put this device away, maybe in an RV, then you occasionally need to have access to it in order to, wake it up. If you're not using any power, because then it's automatically going to power itself down. And the same applies to the AC and the DC outputs. So I noticed that, for example, if my phone is fully charged and it's no longer drawing anything from the cable, then the DC output is also going to switch itself off. So that's the main screen and the main controls, and but we also have settings, and you get a few more functionality here in settings. So you have this echo mode, which again, it's giving you all the power down functionality. So I usually leave it on echo, but maybe you can experiment with this. So if you don't have too much access to this device and you always want it to be available on the Bluetooth, maybe you can just turn off the echo mode, so it's always going to be powered on, and it will be drawing a small amount of current. And you have this echo shutdown. So this is like, if you are not consuming any power, either on DC or AC, then it's going to shut down. You can control the lights from here as well, just like you can control the DC and the AC output on the main screen. And you have this charging mode. So you have the standard, the silent, and the turbo. So the silent charging mode is just lowers the charging amps, and the fan is not going to kick off. And because we are already charging at a lower rate, at above 90% state of charge, the fan didn't even start. Oh, actually it is starting now, I think. I also wanted to mention, maybe you can hear it, that occasionally there is some electronic noise, like buzzing, is coming from this device. It's not really much, but if you are sleeping in a tent, it could be disturbing again. But if you are sleeping, you're not going to charge it or not going to use it. So again, it's going to be silent. And as I mentioned, there is this turbo mode as well for charging. So that's going to charge, instead of 250 watts, like 350 watts. But it is mentioned that you only use it occasionally. And maybe you can hear that the fan is now on. And you have this power lifting, and as it says on the screen, the regular output capacity, or the output rating, is 600 watts, but you can bump it up to 1200 watts if it's only resistive heating, like for example, if it's a kettle or a space heater. But again, running it at 1200 watts, the battery is going to last you like, I don't know, 10-15 minutes. So I'm not really understand what would be the, the really urgent use for this, but maybe you have an idea when. I mean, this could save your life if it all comes down to this, but so it has this functionality. And actually, this is all I wanted to say about this Bluetti EB3A power station model. If you are interested in this device, I'm going to leave purchasing links to the European store. But if you want to buy it in the US or in other markets, you can just go to the main Bluetti.com webpage, where they are sell those localized products as well. But that would be all for today. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you next video.